Hello, it's me again. Go on Amazon.com and order Everything is Moving by Cassie Walker. Order 5 copies and give one to each of your closest associates. You will enjoy this book. It is a fun book to read. It looks good on a bookshelf. So even if you don't have time to read, you should still order it to display for all of your guests. And when they say, "Ooh, how was that book?" you can say, "I'm about to start reading it. I can't wait." And now, for the podcast, please welcome Mark Rose.
Hey!
Hi.
It's my second Skype.
What does that mean?
I did one Skype session, I think, 5 years ago. And now I re-downloaded Skype and I'm Skyping.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I knew of you before I ever met you. You played in a band called Spitalfield,
Yeah.
and I was a huge fan. I just was listening to Spitalfield yesterday.
Really? On purpose?
On purpose, yeah. What was it like starting Spitalfield?
Well, honestly, it was a little bit difficult because we're part of this little like music scene of our friends and of our like friends' older siblings who, we were part of this like punk rock, more of a leaning towards hardcore type sounding bands locally, and we wanted to start a band that sounded different. And there was we were kind of like a bit of a joke to a lot of our friends when we were first starting because, it was like, ooh, these guys want to do something more poppy or whatever.
So you already had a guitar.
That's right, because I started my first band with my buddy Ben Rose across the street, and our mutual friend Blake, and that was when we were in sixth grade. Like when we were 11 years old, we started our first band. It was called the Bloody Stumps.
Wow.
Our parents did not like the name, but that made it even cooler for us. We eventually, though, dropped Bloody and just went by the Stumps, which was not actually better. But
Where did you get a guitar? What made you get a guitar? How did you learn how to play it?
yeah, so I first picked it up that year actually because my mom had a teacher friend who had this acoustic guitar that was, my mom had been holding on to it. They'd used it like in their classrooms, and my mom kind of ended up acquiring it, and it was pretty much collecting dust, and I hadn't really thought about picking it up. Like I'd already been into music. Like I was, I put on records my parents owned, and I was had a few of my own tapes at that time. But yeah, I picked it up because it was time for me to learn the intro riff to Enter Sandman, kind of by ear,
Right.
try to figure it out myself.
Wow. So had that guitar not been readily available?
Yeah, not sure. I mean, I may have still sought one out, but it was there.
Right.
And then of course I wanted an electric guitar like almost immediately. So I remember going with my parents to pick up like a fairly inexpensive, essentially like starter electric guitar and a little practice amp. And they were like, "Do you want to take lessons? What do you want to do?" Because I was already playing piano, and like I had an idea how to read music and play music. So I kind of self-taught, for the first couple of years, and I tried doing lessons, and I didn't get a lot out of it. I kind of found that my teacher was more along the lines of, what song do you want to learn today? We'd listen to it on a tape. He'd spend half our lesson writing out tabs, second half trying to play it, and then being like, see you next week. Like I wasn't really learning guitar as much as I was learning how to jam.
What else do you need besides Enter Sandman?
Right. What else did I need? But so we started a band. It was a three piece. I played guitar, Blake played bass, Ben played drums. And what's funny is that this Ben that I'm mentioning, Ben Rose, no relation, literally lived across the street from me. And Ben eventually becomes a founding member and first drummer of Fall Out Boy, which is outrageous because it was across the street. In fact, that house, my parents still live in the house I grew up in. That house that Ben Rose's family lived in is there, and it's gone through a few different owners over the years as it's been bought and sold. I bet the people who live there have no idea that Fall Out Boy formed in their basement.
Should write them a letter.
I'm thinking about it. Maybe an anonymous letter.
And so sophomore year of high school, you guys decide you have to start some kind of band to set yourself apart.
That's right. And actually, I remember Blake, who was a member of that first band of mine, Blake, he came to the table with, a couple CDs. It was, the Get Up Kids 4 Minute Mile, and it was Texas Is the Reason, Do You Know Who You Are? And let me borrow them. And it was like, let's start a band like that. It was like literally that. It was like, let's start a band in that style. And it's 1998. We're sophomores. We start writing songs, and our first demos sound so much like early Texas Is the Reason. It's kind of unbelievable. Now, it's not nearly as good, but I just mean stylistically. And
you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and when we, kind of all saved up a little bit of money to record, we had already been doing like, basement recordings for years, like with, 4 tracks and, 8 tracks and stuff like that. But we saved up a little money and got in, our parents' van, and they drove us down into Chicago, and we recorded with Matt Allison. And this is when we were 15, and it's at Atlas Studios. And Matt Allison, takes on our project because we're paying customers. And we record these songs that become kind of our first CD that we give away to our friends and stuff. And it's called Capture the Moment. But while we're like taking a break, between takes or whatever, Matt's like, hey, I'm working on this other thing. Have you guys ever heard of the Alkaline Trio? And, at that time we were like, no. And sure enough, it's like Matt is like doing early Alkaline Trio at the same time he's recording our demos,
Wow.
So we were in over our heads because we were young. But we'd been around it for so long, mostly because of Blake's older sibling. Like his older brother, Ryan, was like a gateway to all these cool shows and all these local things, both in Chicago and in the suburbs. And, so we put out this thing and we passed it around. We burned CDRs. And, we would get on shows because I don't know if you remember that era of shows, like for you, like as you got into high school or whatever, but a show would have like 6 or 7 bands on it, and the same like 15 people would be in all those bands. Yeah. Like they'd be in all those bands.
Right.
So I'd be like double and triple dipping at these shows. My hardcore band would be playing, Spitalfield would be playing, some band I played drums in for some reason to be playing. Like, I don't know, just how it goes.
And then, so how long after that EP was out did you guys start realizing that something was happening?
I think that as like, junior and senior year happened for us, we started to be kind of like, the band within our grade, that was like playing out regularly, that was starting to have people that wanted our t-shirts and stuff like that. And people that weren't just in our group of friends started like wanting to support us, so we'd be like, putting on shows in the neighborhood, VFW halls, church basements, whatever, passing out flyers, selling t-shirts for cheap. And I feel like as our other bands started to kind of like fade away and fall apart, this one was taking a huge step forward. And when we went, when we left, graduated high school and went into college, we like specifically got an apartment where, 3 of the 4 members lived there. And I think that allowed us to actually maintain focus. And it was during my freshman year of college that I really was like, all right, I'm in Chicago. I'm where I want to be. I'm doing music because I was at Columbia doing music composition. But I found myself in these classes mostly watching the clock to get out of class to go work on songs. And that's a good thing because it's showing that you're passionate, excited, but it's a bad thing because you're not really taking full advantage of the schooling.
Columbia's expensive.
And it was expensive. And I was in my second year, like partway through, when everything changed, when we actually got offered a recording contract. But between the beginning in '98 to there, you've got multiple EPs and split records with friends. You've got a full length on a local label, Sinister label. You've got the EP that follows that, called the Cloak and Dagger Club, which is when things started to like shift for us, where we're starting to draw pretty darn well, and we're getting on shows in Chicago at Fireside and at Metro, and we kind of realize this is what we want to be doing. So during our summer breaks and winter breaks or spring breaks, we're putting together tours, and we're self-booking them and working with friends and having friends help us book, and we're getting out there, and we're admittedly not making any money. We're in fact losing money, but we're gaining a lot of experience, and we're helping ourselves figure out if this is something we think we actually want to do. Because the first time that you get in a van and trailer and drive away, you're super excited. 2 weeks later, when you're coming home, are you still excited?
Right.
And for us, there was going to be a lineup change. There was going to be some things that would happen before we would end up signing a real recording contract and everything.
Yeah. So what was that moment like, signing a contract? How did it come your way?
Yeah. So we actually, with that EP that I mentioned, which came out in 2002, called the Cloak and Dagger Club, we straight up, like manila envelope with a copy of that EP, which was on Sinister label, a photo, 8x10 photo that our friend Craig had taken of us, a self-written bio, a list of like upcoming shows and accomplishments or whatever. We straight up mailed those things out like snail mail to like 13 different record labels that we either liked or liked something on their catalog. Like, we didn't know anything about the actual business, but we were like, we're going to send this to labels straight up based on the label's like address on the back of CDs that we have. You know what I mean? Like, we're just going to do it. And
how many did you send out?
We sent out 13, and we actually heard back from, I believe, 7, which was shocking. Now, as far as things getting serious, we ended up creating correspondence with like 4 or 5 of them seriously, and then narrowing it down to a few. And we actually played this show at the Metro, where we were opening for the Movie Life and Brand New. Now, this is the Movie Life headlining. Brand New is direct support to them. And Metro put us on as the opening band. And we went, all out on promoting this, because at that time we were really excited. We enjoyed both the Movie Life and Brand New, and this was a big opportunity, rather than doing one of our own local showcases at Metro, to be opening for a much bigger national tour. So we promoted real hard. We got a really great turnout, and we played songs from the Cloak and Dagger Club and a couple songs that would eventually be on Remember Right Now, and a couple of our old songs as well. And the crowd was into it. There was a good response. There was a real positive energy. And 3 of those record labels were in attendance, partially because they had bands playing that night as well. So they were like, we're going to come in, support our band, and see Spitalfield. And we ended up signing with Victory for a variety of reasons. Some of the biggest ones included that they are a Chicago-based label that we grew up with. But then also, when we were talking with these other labels, they all seemed excited and wanting to do something, but Victory was really laying it on thick that like they don't have a lot of Chicago acts, and that they would really be excited to work with us and be able to have that personal relationship that we can drop into the office all the time, and we can get together with their staff outside of work, and actually like develop a relationship. So we ended up going that route.
Did they take you out for pizza?
We did go out for pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how they got you.
Yeah. The cost of 2 large pizzas. Sign the dotted line. Let's go.
So now you're a signed band, and then that's when Remember Right Now comes out on Victory.
Yeah, we moved quickly because we signed the very first week of January of 2003, and we obviously were very excited, but they wanted to move quickly. They actually proposed re-releasing the Cloak and Dagger Club before doing Remember Right Now, and we turned that idea down. Mostly because at that time we had a decent number of songs written. We were excited to get moving, and we didn't think that the Cloak and Dagger Club was fully representative of like where we were going to go and the production level we were going to want to try to shoot for. So when we came we came to terms on like how our deal was going to be structured, the first thing was going to be a full length, and we ended up hooking up with Sean O'Keefe. And Sean, this is kind of funny. I think I've told you about this before on one of our longer drives, but Sean actually did not remember, no pun intended, did not remember that he had recorded Spitalfield in 1999. We had done like a 4-song thing with him. And when he agreed to take on Remember Right Now, based on some of the pre-production demos and stuff like that, when we got together, it was kind of like, hey, like, let's talk about these songs. Let's listen and talk about arrangement and feel and all this stuff. And we're like, Sean, do you not remember us? And he was like a deer in the headlights. And then he was like, oh, wow.
Impressionable.
Yeah. Yeah. But I get it, 1999.
Yeah.
So we record Remember Right Now with him. And at that time, Sean had done some stuff locally that we were really impressed by. Another funny side note is that, Fall Out Boy's Take This to Your Grave was also recorded by Sean, but back to back with our record, as in Take This to Your Grave wasn't even done yet when Remember Right Now started.
Right.
And those records ended up coming out like 3 weeks apart, and us doing our first tour, like nationwide full on tour together that summer. So Sean kind of, was the man at that moment. And locally he had done the full length album for Knockout, which was one of the first like local friends bands that signed a bigger deal where they signed to Fearless. So he had done that. And TJ, who was the bass player of Knockout on that record, joined Spitalfield, right before we recorded Remember Right Now.
Yeah, what was it about Sean?
I don't know. I guess it was something about his kind of, at that time, his work ethic was through the roof. I mean, if there was 24 hours in a day, he wanted to work 24 of them. I mean, he was literally falling asleep at the console. Looking back on that, I'm sure he's got, things he would have done different or whatever, but he was really, really going for it.
So you put that record out and it did really well. How old were you?
Well, I was 19 when we recorded Remember Right Now, and I turned 20 like a month after it came out.
Wow. And you guys were on tour pretty much nonstop for a few years.
That's right. And we at that point, I feel like, because we were just so excited, it was like there was so much happening, not just in the Chicago scene, but like all over. There was kind of this like new thing. And we were a part of it, but we were also kind of like, I don't know. We found ourselves being this band that was kind of splitting. Part of us is part of this Victory Records family and roster that leans towards this like heavier sound, and part of us is touring with pop punk bands and more reminiscent of the recordings that we have been putting out. So we were kind of in no man's land, but we landed a bunch of decent opportunities and made the most of them because it was going the right way. Not as fast as some other groups that were our peers, but it was still moving forward.
Yeah, so you toured a bunch, you put out a couple more albums on Victory, and then the band disbanded.
Yeah, so we did 3 full lengths on Victory, and like you and I've gotten into before, like when the band was calling it quits, it really wasn't a great time, like emotionally for me or for the guys, because we weren't breaking up because we wanted to not do the band anymore. It was more out of like frustration on a business side and an inability to to see the path forward for us to continue.
So what was going on with Victory at the time?
I think that we found ourselves in a position on Victory where we were generating enough interest and enough record sales and enough touring opportunities that we were a valuable asset to them. But we also were drawing interest from major labels and from, teams that were outside of Victory that really wanted to acquire us. And it turned into this battle, this struggle that we felt like we were kind of on the wrong side of when it came to potential contract buyouts or upstream opportunities with different labels. And, we appreciated everything that Victory had done to help get us out the door and help get us from A to B. But once we kind of started, finding these other opportunities, we were kind of floored and a little bit upset that we weren't either given more opportunities within the Victory marketing world and the budgets and stuff, or let go and sold to another label to give them that opportunity. So it was tough. And part of that is our own fault, though, because, a lot changes from when you're 19 years old to when you're 24. Like, those are some really intense years. And when we were 19, didn't really know what these contracts were all about. Like, we didn't really understand a lot of the things that even today is confusing for a lot of artists, but we didn't really understand publishing and royalties and, how to make our passion into our job. Because when folks look on the outside being like, how could bands ever complain? They have the best job ever. It's kind of like, yeah, I agree. It's an amazing thing to play music, but it's also time spent away from your family and your friends. And it's potentially a lot of traveling, and it's dangerous. And there's a lot of highs and lows out there. And, when you're 19 and don't have as many bills, very different than when you got to pay health insurance and rent an apartment and, all these things that, it's not sexy to talk about it, but it's the reality that you've got 4, 5, 6 people's livelihoods cruising down the highway at 75 miles per hour in a 15-passenger van with all their gear and assets and a trailer in the back. And, it's like, that's a lot. It's a lot to think about.
When you look back, is there anything you feel like you could have done to protect yourself more?
Yeah, I think that rather than, going with going the route of saying, hey, we've got a lawyer, we're going to be okay, we should have done a little more due diligence and found an entertainment lawyer that could really speak for us, And,
so you did have a lawyer.
We did. It just maybe wasn't someone who fully understood what we were getting ourselves into. Okay. I would say there's so much content out there, right? There's so many bands. Everybody knows bands that they don't understand why they didn't get bigger, and everybody knows bands that are really big. They say, why is that band so big? Well, the answer is not just their music. It's the people that work with them and for them, and it's the decisions that are made. Who's better at being a band? You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's so funny now because when I think about, other artists who are 19, I think of them as so young and so, like, oh my gosh, I can't remember being that person, and also thinking about like my friends or my parents and stuff being like, yep, go for it.
Yeah.
See ya.
Good luck.
Yeah. Like that conversation talking to my parents about like leaving college to do this. And, while there was a conversation, the end result was like, you're going to school for music so that you can get into a world of songwriting and production, and you want to write music for film and all that. That's why you're in school. This is fast tracking you with an opportunity to actually write music, and school will be there if you want it to be there when you get back. Right. But like, go do this now because you might not ever get this chance. So I was really fortunate to have that be the message being sent to me by my family and friends and girlfriend at the time and group of friends and stuff being like, yeah, you got to go do this. We're excited for you.
So you went on to record solo music. That's how we met. We did some tours together.
That's right. Yeah, and the solo stuff, the first thing I did was very much so a departure from the sound I had previously done with the band, and that was by design because I just wanted to do something different. Like you can imagine, Spitalfield kind of was my life since I was, in high school. So it was like, what was in my CD player, at the time wasn't necessarily what I was performing on stage. You know what I mean? So it was like,
Right.
I always enjoyed the pop sensibility side of things, like. And I think honestly the differences in our musical taste is what made Spitalfield sound happen, because we didn't quite fall into any particular sound, maybe to a detriment, to be honest, but I think that's what kind of helped us have our sound, made us a little bit unique in that way. And so I started doing stuff that was way different, was on a singer-songwriter kick, was on a, wanting to pick up a guitar and just play kind of thing. So kind of went this like blues rock vibe for a while, and then eventually kind of recentered it all and found the sound that I thought was more me. But even today, I couldn't really tell you, like, if someone's like, hey, what genre of music do you play? I usually say singer songwriter because I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, you play Mark Rose music.
That's right,
and it's ever evolving.
It really is.
And so, besides doing solo music, you're also an entrepreneur now. You started a website called downwrite.com.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Downwrite, WRITE, Downwrite. It started from a place of saying this digital shift is happening in music, and people are not buying music the way they used to. And let's find a way to let songwriters still create, but let's make it special and find a way for them to get paid to do creative work. But not in the vein of GoFundMe, but more in the vein of I'll collaborate and work with somebody who is a supporter of me and do something special to them, and treat it both as inspiration, but also as a way to make money. So this like custom songwriting concept is something that Bob Nana and Bob I knew through music as well. Bob, singer of a couple different really wonderful bands, Braid and Hey Mercedes. Bob and I were like, let's start this for you and me, where we make ourselves available to do creative stuff. And we kind of kicked around how to make that happen. And then quickly we're like, wait, let's make it into a community and let's invite some songwriters in and friends of ours to try this concept out and see if anybody even is interested. So we got a technology friend who Bob knew through Threadless, the t-shirt design company from Chicago. And the three of us kind of built this very basic version of what is now downwrite.com. And we launched it with just profiles for me and Bob, and slowly added a few more artists. And this is in 2013, around just after Valentine's Day, or just before Valentine's Day, 2013. And now the site has, slowly but steadily grown to close to 400 artists who have profiles, and artists.
Yeah, I am on the site. I like to open up the shop once in a while. I never realized how good I would be at writing people's theme songs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the beauty, right? Is that that the concept is kind of unique to each individual, like, creator and songwriter, to be like, how do I want to use this platform, and how do I want to engage folks who want to support me, but also our fans, like what's best. Some people write full songs, some people do minute-long theme songs, some people do joke stuff, some people do really heavy stuff. I mean, the beauty of it is that it is what you want it to be. And as the concept has evolved and changed, the technology is slower catching up to what we're trying to do, but it's been a really powerful thing to watch artists, do something special to fans that really care about them and their music, and then watch those artists be able to like see more income from it than they do from their streams online and from their lack of record sales online.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Mark.
Thanks for the Skype call, John. I hope we Skype regularly now.
Wow,